Welcome to Hops News, the trusted source in beer culture news. Here's your host, Jay Brew, with special guests, the Hoppy Mommy, Lucky, and Nash.
Hey, welcome to another episode of Hops News. Hey, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I was chatting with our guest here a minute, and it is unbelievable. I didn't realize how much time has passed since Bryan and I initially met and started having conversations around beers. But I am excited to get caught up with Bryan and hear more about the where the beer industry is at today. But going to be a good time. I will tell you guys right now, here in the Hops News headquarters porch here in Bryan Roth, North Carolina, I pulled up my weather app right before we got on because I sat out here and was sweating just setting up this equipment. And it got up to 93 degrees in Bryan Roth, North Carolina today. And I will tell you right now, if it was this sticky up here, I can imagine what Bryan and Hoppy were dealing with down off of this mountain because it was absolutely brutal up here. I think they said it was well, I know for a fact it was the hottest day of 2021 so far up here in the high country of North Carolina. And I apologize, but I had to get started a little bit early on my first beer. So first beer was pretty interesting, as probably some of our loyal listeners and viewers know. This is not a style of beer that I would typically go for. But when I seen it and it said Sour Me Unicorn Farts, I had to try this damn beer. It's a DeClaw Brewing Company. It is a glittered sour ale. Comes in at 5.5. And I will tell you what, I'm a little bit impressed. It's a pretty good beer, if I'm being honest with myself, and would probably buy another one if given the opportunity. So stepped out of my comfort zone a little bit tonight with my first beer, but it was well worth it. Hope you guys are enjoying a good one tonight. I know it's sticky all over the world, it seems like. From what I'm reading and seeing in the news, it seems to be hot all over. Let's go check in with Hoppy down in Orlando. I guarantee you that gold bond index down there is pretty high. Hoppy, how are things going in Orlando?
Apparently cooler than North Carolina. I just looked up our weather. Our high today was 88. So,
Oh.
I mean, everyone's complaining about these crazy temperatures, and I'm like, this isn't a bad July. This is honestly cooler than most Julys. So, I mean, yeah, it hasn't been bad. It's been very rainy, but that's always good for the summer because that usually means less hurricanes because it keeps the water colder. But yeah, Florida's going great. We actually have bear sightings in our neighborhood, like a block over. So everyone thought we just had alligators, sharks, brown recluse, Florida panther, bobcats. We also have black bears. So this thing's pretty massive. My husband's hoping to catch it. People are catching it about midnight. So he's hoping to catch it at least on the ring. So we'll see.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you. So up here, we have Ring, and once you have a Ring device, you kind of be a part of the neighborhood. They call it your neighborhood. So we see all kinds of stuff that show up on our neighbors. Neighbors, it could be somebody that's 5 miles away, show up on their Ring devices. But bears, everything that you can imagine in the mountains of North Carolina show up on Ring. So it's kind of interesting. Is that how you guys saw it?
Somebody saw it on a Ring, and then somebody actually saw it outside their window and got actual pictures. And so we have, there's a Facebook account for our actual neighborhood, and we've heard of bear spottings in the area, but not walking through our neighborhood, knocking over trash cans. So that's the first. But they keep knocking down woods to build more houses, so they're running out of places to go. So that's what's gonna happen. But yeah, it's a pretty big bear too. You saw it walking across the driveway, a double car driveway, and it's taken up half the driveway. So it looks like a decent sized bear. So
yeah, that's is I guess as cool as it is to see the spottings or hear about them. The sad part is, like you said, they're kind of running out of areas to live. But
yeah,
interesting to say the least. You guys have it all down there in Florida.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, but it's fun. It's cool. I mean, I've never seen a bear in Florida, though. I've only seen one in your neck of the woods.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I didn't even know I've lived here my whole life. I didn't even know we had bears until a few years ago. But I did not go out of my comfort zone beer-wise. I am drinking an IPA. This one is Joker-themed Smilex from Pariah Brewing. So it's got the little Joker thing. So I'll definitely be posting that on the Geek page. I have had the unicorn farts, and I have to say, I thought it was a pretty solid sour as well. But I do think there's a lot of hype over the name and the can art, obviously. But it is a solid sour.
Yeah, I can't. I'm definitely not going to complain. And like I said, I guess I don't really gravitate towards sours. Sours were kind of a real big thing, I guess, maybe 3 to 4 years ago. Everybody was really getting involved in that. But yeah, it's a good one. I would definitely pick it up again and order it anywhere that they may have it on tap. That's for sure. It's a good beer. Definitely better than average for sure.
Yeah.
Hobby, I'm going to be real disappointed if you guys get the first Sasquatch on Ring.
Well, if anybody's going to have it, it's definitely going to be us. Although, that's probably a version of Florida Man.
Yeah, I guarantee it's a Florida Man, so you guys will be the first one to get it on Ring for sure. Javi, it's always good. It's going to be you and I tonight, it sounds like, from the regular crew. The Lucky's still down and out. I think he might be a little bit heartbroken with the breakup up there with Big Daddy. Brew Witch is traveling the country. I think the last we heard from her, she was in California, maybe somewhere in wine country. I know she did a stop there in Denver. And then I don't know where MASH is, but for the listeners that may not know, or the viewers, MASH's real name is Matthew Roth, and our guest tonight is Bryan Roth. And Matt was a little bit... I think he was a little bit intimidated that we were trying to replace him with a better Roth. So it'll be just a Hoppy and I show tonight, but we got a great guest lined up for you. And let's go check in and meet our guest, Bryan, out there in Raleigh, North Carolina. Bryan is a news editor with Good Beer Hunting. Bryan, man, it's good to catch up with you again.
Hey, thanks a bunch. Intimidating is not necessarily an adjective that's used to describe me, so I will take it. Sorry, Matt.
Yeah. I don't know what Matt had really had going on tonight, but I can guarantee you when he saw your name, I know that raised his eyebrows a little bit. And to be completely honest with you, he's probably a little bit upset that he's missing tonight, because he always enjoys talking beer with good people, and I know he would enjoy our conversation with you tonight.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. And as luck would have it, you can see it over my shoulder, this shoulder. There's another Bryan Roth, actually, who is in the beer industry. He is a co-owner of Southern Brewing Company in Athens, Georgia. This beer that you can see behind me signs for a collaboration beer that we did pre-COVID in 2019.
Oh, how cool.
Southern? Is it Southern or Southern Tier? What was it?
Southern Brewing Company.
Southern Brewing Company. Yeah, that's interesting. Matter of fact, I was listening to a little bit of that podcast, I think, when you were headed on the road, headed to that collaboration, one of your podcasts that you did about that collaboration. So that's pretty interesting that you mentioned that. Definitely good to catch up with you, Bryan. As we said in the beginning of this, before we went on air, I think it's been maybe 6 to 7 years ago that you and I met and started talking beer and doing all of that sort of thing. So where's kind of life taken you in this time that you and I haven't connected? What have you been doing since then?
Yeah, I think we had connected initially around the time that I was doing some blogging covering the beer industry. Right before I started doing regular freelance work as well. And that was with All About Beer, RIP. Before I started doing some work with Beer Advocate magazine, RIP, and a few others. I've been doing regular freelance work covering the U.S. beer, although now I often say beverage alcohol industry, given the wide variety of change that we've had just in the last couple of years. So now I serve as news editor for the Sightlines section of Good Beer Hunting. That is a publication that, again, covers beer a lot, but things do extend well beyond that. An international collection of writers and editors and photographers telling stories about beer. And the section that I oversee, I work in coordination with Johnny Garrett out in London, Kate Burnett here in the U.S. and Montana, telling timely stories and spot news about what's going on in the beer industry.
Yeah, I will tell you, the one thing that I like about Good Beer Hunting is it's a story platform. From my understanding, I don't understand or know the ins and outs about what you guys are doing or kind of the mission and everything, but the stories are absolutely phenomenal. If you enjoy beer and you enjoy good story podcast, you've got to check out what those guys are doing at Good Beer Hunting, because it is absolutely amazing, some of the stories that you guys share on there.
Yeah, thank you very much. I often describe it to people when telling them about it for the first time as a digital magazine, just because there's so much focus on photography, in-depth storytelling, whether that's a long-form piece or something that's maybe just 1,000 to 2,000 words. But I know this is something that myself and the other members of the editorial staff really try to strive for. So I appreciate you saying that. Stories drive everything. And so that's certainly behind a lot of what we do.
Yeah, that's good, man. I always enjoy listening to it. And it's always good content when you can put a story behind it and then start putting names and faces together with some of the brands that a lot of these beer drinkers know. I mean, you're getting brands in there, and you obviously have brands that nobody's ever heard of before, or maybe only a few people's heard of before, but it's always good to be able to hear about those stories and check out those brands and what you guys are doing with some of them, because it is definitely amazing content.
Yeah, thank you. The podcast, which is complimentary as well as separate from what we put in text on the website, I also describe as kind of an oral history, a real-time oral history, because we're talking to retailers, producers, distributors, people tangentially connected to beer, bartenders, servers, people who are working in the industry and sharing, the current stories, their perspectives, their experiences. That it's really fun I was just listening a couple months ago to one of the first podcasts put on Good Beer Hunting, which fittingly was Michael Kaiser, the founder and creative director, and Kate Bernat, who is now my colleague too. So it was so funny listening to them talk, whatever it was, 4 or 5 years ago, and then the relationships that I've built with them now and the stories they were telling then and how they relate to what we do now is fascinating. So that's one of the things I love about the podcast. We really do strive to make it about the people and what their story is behind what they do.
Well, I have to say, I've been listening to the podcast last few days. I really wasn't familiar with you guys at all, but once I saw your logo, I'm like, I've come across them because I'll do beer school sometimes for Hops News. So I'll pull stuff from multiple different websites. Like I've done silly ones like, how many breweries have done things for Shark Week. And then I'll do things like, something about hops or yeast or something. So I'll pull stuff from hop culture and you guys and craft beer and whatnot. But what I've loved is I didn't know you had a podcast part, and I've been listening to that, and I absolutely love the history.
Thank you.
The history is just amazing. And I did listen to an interview with you with the 2 women in Seattle that run like a beer school.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that you're not just doing history. There's also a lot of focus on inclusion. And I just finished the second part of that 3-part series. So this was something I thought, like, I did not realize. We've all heard the stories. Women were the original brewers. And then the white man realized he could make money off of it and he stole it. Well, apparently slaves were the original brewers too. And the white man stole it because stole it and used them to brew the beer. So that's one for anybody listening. Amazing 3-part podcast. And it seems like you guys it's an amazing collaboration of bringing people together, like you were just saying. So I feel like that's kind of like my dream job. I'm not going to lie. If I could get paid for all the stuff I do for Hops News, that's the dream.
Yeah, that series you're talking about, spearheaded by Jamal Lemon. It was a story about Charleston connecting history, white supremacy, bringing it into a contemporary focus. Brian Alberts, who does a lot of our historical focused coverage, helping to oversee that as well with a couple other writers too. So shout out to Jamal, who's done some tremendous work for us, tackling very difficult topics in long, informative ways. So appreciate you listening and reading. That's just, it's really important stuff. And I'm glad that we get the chance to tell those stories.
Right. And I mean, it's very entertaining as well. Like, you guys were talking about what beer did they have at this festival. And obviously I don't want to say all the things I found interesting because I think people should go check it out and listen for themselves. But because I'm a huge nerd for beer history. It's in beer, my dad used to say, and I've said this before on the podcast, the more you learn about wine, the less you know. And I feel like it's the same thing with beer. The more I learn about beer, the less I know. So it's always fun to learn more stuff.
There, a friend of mine, M. Sauter, who folks might know from her cartoon and website Pints and Panels.
Yes.
Advanced Cicerone, working toward her Master Cicerone certification. She'll be taking the test again this year. Good luck, Em. She often says, she's one of the smartest beer people that I've ever met. And she is very open that whatever we know today is going to change tomorrow. So you should never assume that you know everything and that what you know now is going to be the answer tomorrow or next week. And that's one of the beautiful things. However you want to throw around the word innovation, there's certainly stuff happening all the time that changes our perspective, the way we think about the beer industry, the products that are sold, the things that we taste. And so that's why I think, even just like the conversation we're having right now, this moment in time is an encapsulation of something that's going to be completely different a year from now.
Yeah. And after the year we just went through, that's no truer story or no truer statement has been made, Bryan. It's been a hell of a ride for a lot of people, but I'll be honest with you, it's been a crazy ride for the alcohol industry as a whole, and especially what the beer industry is going through now. But before we kind of get into that, Bryan, we usually start by now with kind of your origin story or how you got into beer. So with that, what was your first beer? What was that first beer experience that you remember?
I'm fairly certain it was a Coors Light, which was probably immediately spit out. I'm past statute of limitations, so I think I can safely say that Coors Light turned into a Smirnoff Ice pretty quickly at that point in time. I think, like a lot of people, it took me a little bit to kind of find the right beer that was going to make beer an enjoyable experience for me.
Yeah, for sure. And that's obviously a very typical story for a lot of people and an experience in the beer. But I'll be honest with you, that's what kind of makes the experience what it is, right? Because especially I can speak for myself and I can speak for our son that is now of age to be able to drink. When I started was the same way. Granddad's refrigerator, thought it was the cool thing and tasted it and was like, man, that's the absolute worst thing they've ever put in a bottle. And I kind of shared that same experience. I remember this very vividly. We were in our home in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and our son was probably 5 or 6, and again, statute of limitations long overgone in this, and I had a Guinness poured in a glass that obviously looks a lot like a chocolate milk to a kid, and I could tell he was interested in it. Asked him if he wanted to try a little bit of it, and he took a sip, and that was about the end of it for his beer experience, probably until this day. He's still not a big beer drinker till this day, but it's definitely interesting to share those, because I think the experience is a part of what makes the beer culture, right? Because some of my earliest memories are of my grandfather on his Friday evening, Saturday afternoons, and watching the ball game or listening to the ball game on the radio, enjoying an MGD or a Miller or something of that's just kind of brings back those kind of memories that for a lot of people, and that is for me. Especially for people like Lucky that's grown up in Milwaukee, the beer industry and that type of those domestic brands that we all recognize are a big part of his history and their culture.
Yeah, it's one of the wonderful things because you always have these conversations with people who love beer. The question of what was your first beer, what was your first craft beer, what beer really changed things for you. We lack so many truly shared experiences these days, especially over the course of the last 18 months, that using an experiential good, like you don't know what a beer is until you actually open it and smell it and drink it. And that's something we all have to share in together. So like, even if, somebody certainly has had the similar experience to me where, it's your first time having a beer, you crack open that Coors Light and it's garbage. Like there's so few things that we might have that kind of instinctive memory that connects back to like a visceral reaction. It really makes it a special thing, even though it was like not a great thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you said Smirnoff Ice, my stomach turned.
I was doing it before icing people was cool.
Oh, somebody tried to ice me once. I was like, you're kidding, right? This was like probably 5 years ago. I was like, and somebody goes, she's not going to do it. I'm like, there's no way in hell I'd take a sip of it, let alone chug it.
So Bryan, what was the first craft experience that you would remember?
There's one in particular that always stands out. So I grew up in upstate New York, upstate New York. Right in between Rochester and Syracuse. I went to school in Ithaca, New York. So for those, at least on the East Coast, Saranac Brewing was very prominent. And it was my senior year of college. I think things started to turn a little bit because I had just enough disposable money to drink something other than like Bud Light, or if I was fancy, Blue Moon. And Saranac's seasonal caramel porter became a mainstay in the fridge. It was myself, my friends Cody and Justin. We would buy it by the case from our local beer store in Ithaca. And most of the time, honestly, we didn't even bother to refrigerate it. We had a basement in this very cliche college house. So we'd put the case down there, maybe grab like 3 or 4 to keep in the fridge. But even at, ambient temperature in a basement, that beer was so good. And that and Saranac's Black Forest, which at the time you could go to Wegmans and get a growler-sized package of that. So one individual thing for, 32 ounces. And those seemed like these very special experiences that the three of us got to share. And just really, it was that change of, oh, wait, beer tastes like this thing?
Yeah. When you said upstate New York, the first thing I wanted to say Saranac. As soon as you said that, I was thinking he's going to say Saranac.
It's under that or Jenny Cream Ale.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So my question is, you may or may not know this, is Saranac still around?
Saranac is still around. I'm not drinking one out of my Syracuse University koozie. But yeah, so it's actually Saranac, sadly discontinued Black Forest several years ago. Schwartz beer for those who haven't had it before. But because of that beer, if I ever go into a tap room, I will get the Schwartz beer that is on tap. These days, it's usually listed black lager because Schwartz beer, nobody knows what that means. So Saranac is still around.
I was going to say, I see that style a lot on May 5th. A lot of the breweries do May the Schwartz be with you.
Well, I know where to mark my calendar this year then. It is unabashedly, I think, one of my, maybe my favorite style, but one that I buy the most off draft just because if it's there, I will absolutely get it.
Right, it's very underrated, yeah.
But I think to get to what we're talking about, change in the beer industry. So Saranac was known for Black Forest and making kind of traditional, East Coast style IPAs. And now, like so many other companies, they've pivoted. They're making alcoholic tea. They're doing hard seltzer. They have an IPA focused lineup, and their variety packs really reflect kind of intensely flavor forward beers too. So it's still around, still doing well. Like I see them in grocery stores here all the time in North Carolina, even, big box stores like Target too. It's been a while since I've had one of their beers, but it's also one of those things like it's forever embedded in my head.
Yeah.
Something I'll always have with me.
Yeah, for sure. And if my memory serves, I think they were one of the first to do like a variety pack because they were releasing variety packs long ago that I remember, even before a lot of the big brands, what we call craft brands now, were even mainstream and in those supermarkets. So very interesting brand. Obviously growing up around there had to be pretty interesting for you. Let's we're going to take a quick break from talking specifically to Bryan. And Bryan, when we bring you back, I wanted you to kind of give us the state of the beer industry today. What it is that the beer industry is seeing, maybe some of the challenges that they're facing, and maybe some of the trends that they're seeing, and where it could go from where it is. But And we'll take a little quick break, and we'll go check in with Hoppy to get some beer news. I think she's got some pretty interesting news for us tonight.
So my news is a little depressing for everybody in South Africa. So last summer, I did mention that South Africa had shut down breweries and stopped all alcohol sales to prevent gathering and to decrease alcohol-related hospital visits, which it actually did decrease alcohol-related hospital visits. But I do remember there were some visits where people had injured themselves home brewing. So, it's all balanced. However, 16 months later, the alcohol bans have come and gone, and they're currently on again. South Africa has lost 27 breweries, and 31 are on the verge of closing if the current ban continues. They've gotten no financial assistance, and the industry in general was growing, and now it is crashing. They're attempting to get the ban lifted. When I read this, I wanted to see, I wonder how the hop farm industry is doing down there, because, InBev owns hops down there and all that, and I came across an article on this page called Good Beer Hunting about a guy who had just started a hop farm in Johannesburg, which I thought was pretty interesting. So I guess hops are still doing good. I didn't find anything about that, which makes sense because I know that with the droughts they had in the last few years, the hops weren't doing so great, and the big beer companies were holding those hops for them, so I'm sure they found lots of places to still sell the hops, but these little breweries are struggling. So I'm going to keep my eye if there's any, I don't know what the hell we can do outside of South Africa, but if I come across any petitions or anything, I'll let them go, because this is people's livelihoods. This is, we all know craft beer is more than just beer. So that's my news.
Yeah,
Sorry
I will
to bring it down.
No, I will also state that Beer Works, I believe they've got their start from a little pub room or tap room across from Fenway Park there in Boston, have now turned into a chain within the past, I guess, probably decade. Announced they're permanently closing all their locations. So, I think there's a lot of challenges, and we'll talk to Bryan a little bit more about that when we bring him back on, but there's definitely challenges in the beer industry, but where there's challenges, there's opportunities. And here's a big opportunity for you. This is apparently putting a pickle in cheap beer makes it taste way better. And this is by Grillo's Pickles. Grillo's Pickles. I definitely wish I could have found some of the Grillo's Pickles to put in a Pabst. But unfortunately, we don't have Grillo's around here. But what I did do is I do have a Pabst. Of course. And I did find some Mount Olive, North Carolina pickles. And I did put one in a Pabst to give it a try.
Oh, we're getting a live reaction?
And I have to say, I'm one, as Hoppy knows, I'm a fan of the dill beers that are out, the kind of fad in that space right now. I will do it again, because it is... I like PBR anyways, so you can't make it much better than what it is, but it's hard to beat a dill pickle in a beer for sure. So definitely
as pickly as some of the pickle beers?
Well, just putting the pickle itself in there isn't, but I will tell you, in the next few minutes, I'll dump a little bit more brine in there and let you know how that turns out, because you can't go wrong. I mean, you just can't go wrong if you got a PBR and a pickle in it, for sure.
See, the only way to make PBR good for me, I think, is to make beer cheese out of it.
That will definitely do it as well. You can't go wrong with beer cheese.
No.
Bryan, welcome back from our crazy beer news.
If you package that beer in a 16-ounce can with the pickle in it, you could sell it for $25 a 4-pack.
Oh,
easy.
Just put it in mason jars. Go sell it at a farmer's market. That's genius. Go get that copyrighted right now.
You
go
got
get a trademark.
3 days until the weekend starts, and people will line up at 9 a.m. on a Saturday. You've got your assignment.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would be that's kind of a great, I don't even know what they call those, beer mosas, I guess. That's a great brunch brunch beer for sure. You could definitely get away with that. Bryan, we didn't even ask you, what are you drinking tonight?
I am drinking a Vienna lager from East Brother, which is in Richmond, California. I've only ever had a couple of their beers. They focus on lagers specifically. and make some of the best ones that I think I've had from that neck of the woods. Now, I will preface that by saying I live on the East Coast. So, California viewers and listeners, I'll take your advice for best California lager. Do not say 805 from Firestone.
That's everywhere. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So what's your East Coast lager, Brian? What's your? I got to get this because I love the lagers and the pilsners, especially during the summer months. So what's your go-to lager on the East Coast right now?
Yeah, I will say, I just recently had my first beers ever from Threes Brewing, which is in New York City. And I know I've met the team once before. They are known for their IPAs by, I think, in the Wheats enthusiasts. They are passionate, as so many brewers are, about lagers. And so, hands down, top to bottom, their lineup of lagers that they make, they did a Czech pills that just kind of, it was one of those things where I sat down at like 9 p.m. This is how important this beer was to me. I sat down at 9 p.m. It was just like a lousy long day. I finished work. I had some time to exercise. I was running around doing errands. And it was just like the first beverage that I had in a few hours. And there was just something, it's so sweet when it hits your lips kind of thing. It was just, Threes, if you can find it, they do ship throughout the state of New York. They sell online. Love what they do.
Nice. I will definitely have to look for that. That sounds like something I would enjoy myself.
Yeah, I had a friend at the beginning of the pandemic, we were all doing beer trades, and she was in New York, and she hooked me up with their beer, Finback, and Other Half. I got to finally get an Other Half. And now we get them down here. They distribute in Florida.
Hudson Valley-ish, Suarez also makes some of the best lagers I think you'll find, at least in the Northeast. I think everybody's kind of got something a little bit local-ish to them, but always a great one.
Nice.
So is that one, what's your favorite style?
Oh, I think so. Schwartz beer is the one that I order the most in tap rooms, followed very closely by Hefeweizen.
Oh, okay.
I love Hefeweizen. Live Oak out of Texas, which I think a lot of people, if you've had their beer, they focus on German styles. I would say makes the best Hefeweizen in the United States.
Okay. And they're right by the airport. I did not
They
know
are. You can sit out on their back deck, drink the best Hefeweizen in the country, and listen to the planes fly overhead.
Nice. I will have to check them out. A good Hefeweizen is not easy to find. There's people that do it well, obviously brewers that do it well, but some that don't do it so well. I'll definitely have to keep my eye open for them. Brian, state of the beer industry. Let's have it.
Well, it's not great, Bob. So it depends. I think the unique spot that we find ourselves in at this moment in time is the broader kind of contemporary categorization of all things beverage alcohol. It's in the last few months, I found myself prefacing when I talk about beer, wine, or spirits, I say the traditional categories of beverage alcohol, because we have hard seltzer, because we have hard tea or hard coffee or hard yerba mate, hard milk, not far behind. If there's something you can dream of, like it's going to exist in an alcoholic version.
You can be it. Okay.
So I have this running joke, this joke thread on Twitter, which is actually not really a joke, where I grab little snippets of in the moment news and I retweet it with the phrase "nobody likes beer anymore," which of course is not true.
Right. No, I know what you mean though. Yeah.
By volume, beer is still the most consumed beverage alcohol in the country. But the reason why I said all of what I just did is that it continues to lose share by servings rapidly. And this has been happening for over 2 decades now. And so when we talk about the state of the beer industry, I think it's important to put it in context of, the specialization of which craft beer is certainly a part of, as well as the premiumization of it too. And so, by all estimates, a combo of analysis by Beverage Marketing Corporation, the Beer Institute, IWSR, by the time we get to the beginning of 2025, so we're just talking a few years away, beer will be about a third of the beverage alcohol servings consumed by Americans. And the reason I say servings is because you can't do an apples to apples because of alcohol content. So, 2 ounces of a spirit versus 6 ounces of a wine versus 12 ounces of a beer. And so where we were 20 years ago was beer was about 60%. And so over the span of 25 to maybe 30 years, that collection of servings of beer will go in half. And a lot of that is because of, again, what I just said. The options just range about anything you can dream of. And then most notably as well, when we talk about what beer has lost in these last 2 decades, spirits has almost exclusively picked that up from beer too. Which is also, I think, why when we look at what's happening with individual companies and breweries, like, for example, this week, so tomorrow, we're talking on July 28th. Tomorrow on the 29th, Southern Tier Brewing is releasing Pumpkin, just in time for all of our Halloween parties.
Shout out to Matt. He's a very basic bitch, so he's very excited.
The other Roth will be happy as hell and wondering why they didn't release it on July 4th.
The right way to kick off your summer with a nice allspice cinnamon scented beer. We all can kick back and relax as we watch the sparklers and the fireworks overhead.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Not the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown.
So, Southern Tier, in conjunction with their annual release of Pumpkin, which is, as best as I can remember, now always on the 29th of July. They are releasing a spirit version of it as well. And so that's just the exact in the moment example of the way that categories are blurring, companies have to diversify, and it's just the way the market is going. We have the most diverse collection of drinkers that we've ever had in history, and that reflects the most diverse collection of products that we've ever had.
So do they have a pumpkin seltzer?
Matt's already has it.
Oh, they do, don't they? I just asked the question.
Shipyard.
Yeah, Shipyard's got a pumpkin or pumpkin. What's their pumpkin? What's a Shipyard's pumpkin? Whatever they do. But he sent us that photo that they do have a pumpkin seltzer. That's pretty crazy.
He offered to send me one. I told him that was okay.
Yeah, he can keep it for sure. For sure, keep it. So it's Bryan, what do you kind of attribute this shift to? Is it one thing that if I take my uninformed opinion and I just look at the consumer, I would say that it's probably the more health conscious consumer, especially if we're shifting to spirits, because generally, if you talk to people that are very health conscious and work out on a regular basis, maybe they're training for competitions or something of that sort, they generally will drink a clear spirit of some sort. Is that what you see, or do you see these shifts because of other reasons?
That's part of it. I think that's often seen as an easy catch-all that large media typically points out. And it's not that it's not true. The way that we think about products in any aspect of our lives, the last 10 years has been inundated with ones that are marketed around healthier or health-focused aspects. In beverage alcohol, it's the better for you. That's like the preface to those kinds of products, hard seltzer included. And so when we talk about something like a 5% hard seltzer that has 100 calories, 2 grams of carbs, to be completely clear, that's still poison you're putting in your body. You can kill yourself.
Less calories.
Right? You're just consuming fewer calories in doing so. And so I think, that better for you is always kind of an important qualifier here. I've done a lot of focus and wrote an in-depth article about Michelob Ultra, which is perhaps, kind of the apex, the perfect example of this, is that it was originally supposed to be a beer for boomers. It was tested out by AB InBev in Florida and Arizona, New Mexico, if I remember correctly, because their goal was, this was during the Atkins craze in the late 90s, early 2000s, when people wanted, low or no carb. And so their whole idea was, we're going to have a bunch of golfers who are on Atkins who are going to want a beer that reflects the healthier lifestyle that they want. Well, it just ended up being popular overall with a younger set. And now we have Michelob Ultra today, and it fits in perfectly with what I always kind of think of as the American psyche, where there's this poll that's done by Gallup every year. This question asks Americans, do you want to lose weight? And for the last 30 years, it is consistently about 2/3 of respondents, about 66%. It might fluctuate up or down a couple percentage points. And then they ask the follow-up question, are you actively trying to lose weight? And that is always about 1/3 of respondents. And so if you think about that in context, like I'm bringing things together to kind of like create this web. But if you think about these things together, what we have is that, an example of Americans who say they want to accomplish the goal, but maybe don't want to put in the work toward it, or at least realize the challenges that it's not as easy as they thought it would be. But then we also have products, whether it's Michelob Ultra or protein-infused granola bars, or milk that has, ultra filtered purified milk with 20 grams of protein. Like, there's a reason why these things exist and sell so well and do well in focus groups to get to that point. And that's because that better for you argument does work.
I really like that you did it in quotes, because to me, it's 100% calories. It's like, it's weight. It's not, some people it is health. I'm not discounting everybody, but I feel like a lot of people it is weight. And it's like, they don't realize, well, if you just eat healthy, then you can drink what you want and you don't have to drink these. But I have a question. I read an article recently that said a lot of beer drinkers are drinking less beer, but they're drinking higher ABV beer. So do you think that's impacting the numbers, because we're still looking at beers like 5% Budweiser?
Yeah, so if you look across beer, the average ABV has been sneaking up for years. The data most recently that I pulled is a little bit old at this point, a couple of years. But whether you're looking at macro craft or Brewers Association defined craft, all those ABVs are creeping up. The last I knew, the average ABV for a Brewers Association defined craft beer was about 6%. Which is one full point above, kind of that average we think about for 5%. But I will say this has been a lot of reporting that myself and Kate Bernat have done for Sightlines, specifically looking at these two parallel narratives that do not make either of them untrue. The fact that we are looking for products that are better for you, lower calorie, lower ABV, and also looking at double IPAs, 8-9%. One of the best success stories in craft beer of the last 2 years has been Voodoo Ranger Imperial Double IPA from New Belgium. That is a 9% IPA that retails about $12 for a 6-pack, and has grown way faster than just about any other individual brands. I believe it is on pace to end 2021 by dollars in IRI tracked retail as the number one IPA in the country.
Wow.
And
They're
so,
InBev now, though, aren't they?
No, New Belgium is owned by, is it Lion? They were purchased by a Asian beverage company 2 years ago, I think it was.
Oh, is it the one that owns the very popular one that you get at a lot of like sushi restaurants? Corinne? No, that's Anchor.
We're on the internet. We can do this.
Yeah, Brian, it's pretty interesting that's kind of the trend, but you see it yourself a lot, and it's kind of the same thing where people are going to spirits, right? You can get from an ounce or 2 ounces of spirits what you can get from 16 ounces of beer, or 16 ounces of beer, depending on how you look at it or what the ABV is. And that tends to be, a lot of people, as you said, that are leading towards that healthier lifestyle, whether they're truly there or just trying to find an easier path to that. That's the mentality, right? Is if I just drink one 16-ounce beer that's 9%, I'm good. I don't have to drink 2 6%ers or 2 5%ers or whatever that may be. So it's kind of interesting how all of that, and now you've got the data to show that, a double IPA is leading the IPA category, or will soon lead that category. That's simply astonishing where we were at just 5 years ago.
Yeah, so to put context for Voodoo Ranger Imperial IPA, so the craft category in retail stores, if you look at the first half of 2021 versus the first half of 2020, was about -4% growth. Now that doesn't sound great, but we also have to keep in context what happened with COVID, the rush, and the necessity of off-premise in-store purchases. And so that -4% for the craft beer category kind of reflects the fact that 2020 was just abnormally high, while 2021 is a bit more normal. For Voodoo Ranger Imperial IPA, it is up 44% this year. Now, that's the time frame. To put that in context again, the craft category was -4. Voodoo Ranger was +44. Not -4, +44. And so, there have been a number of copycats from larger breweries who have tried to enter that lower price double IPA space that just haven't been able to capture that same kind of fire that New Belgium has. And Jeremy, to your point too, when it comes to spirits, the share of servings falls within this broader idea of premiumization, both in terms of what we drink, how we drink, the kind of things that we look for when we think about what that word could mean to us. And that might mean fewer calories, that might mean higher price. And so there's that shift in all the ways I think we found liquor and spirits to fit within our lives. And in a real way, to what you were saying, people like to party. I say that with a smile, but there's also a reason, we can't deny the fact that as lower calorie, lower ABV hard seltzers do well, we also have 9% IPAs kind of ruling the land. This is if I had a party hat, I'd be spinning the top on it, I'd be blowing the little streamer out of the side, and confetti would be falling. That, I think, is a real reality, both in good and bad, that exists today. That, people are buying higher ABV things because that's what they want.
Yeah. For sure. I will tell you, I sat in a meeting today, and the conversation was, there is no Tito's vodka anywhere in the state of North Carolina at an ABC store. Think about that for a minute. You cannot buy a case of Tito's vodka anywhere that we know of, at least in Western North Carolina, at an ABC store. Now, that's just there's obviously reasons behind that. I think COVID comes into play. You get into the brown liquors that have to be aged, and you get into what they're calling the stockpiling mentality of 2020, where everybody was buying everything on the shelves. All of that leads to that, but it's definitely an interesting space in the alcohol industry right now, that we are dealing with things like this. And that we're seeing an Imperial IPA that's soon to lead the category of IPAs on the shelf space and flying through the markets that they are doing. I will dare say that a big part of that, I think, Brian, is Voodoo Ranger has been around for years. They have a brand. It's trusted. Everybody knows what they're going to get when they pick up that package because they've already had it once. And now it's $12 for a 6-pack. Why wouldn't you?
Super cheap.
Yeah.
Well, and so here's the thing: is I will take a counter position to that. I think, and this is something that this is a conversation I had with a lot of people, retailers and producers last year, because we saw these in the May, June, July timeframe of last year when lockdown and our own personal quarantines were hitting a very serious and important level. That there was this huge run, these sales spikes on these classic long tenured brands, New Belgium Fat Tire, Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, Sam Adams Boston Lager, which then promptly disappeared by the end of the year. And those brands ended up pretty much at average or below where the rest of the category was. And the conversations back then was like, oh, well, people are going to the grocery store and they're looking for something that they know and they trust, and they know that it's going to be good in a time when they need some comfort. My counter argument is no, they saw something that was on sale, has always been there, it's always in stock, and then also looked at other aspects like ABV. And so while that certainly might be a case for some beer enthusiasts, when you look at the broad range trends as well as what happens otherwise in the market outside of those moments in time, I think there's a lot of information to show us that ultimately, what was in stock sold at that time, what people could get because maybe they just recognize, oh, I see that all the time and I can only spend 10 minutes in here because I'm going to get COVID from touching things. Right. But these are all things that we have to we're mind, right? Like I wore gloves in the grocery stores for probably like the first few months because we didn't know. Like we just didn't know. And so there were Americans were seen. This is from a variety of survey organizations. They were doing more shorter trips on fewer days. Because it was just kind of like that in and out thing. They're stocking up with as much stuff as they can grab in shorter periods of time, and then it's onward to home.
Yeah,
toilet paper and beer,
and diapers.
Diapers.
There's only one thing that sells more in grocery stores than beer, and that's diapers.
Oy.
Hey, Brian, real quick, you said something. Do they actually sell Fat Tire beer? No, I'm just kidding you, man.
You should know that.
Yeah, I'm just kidding you, man. I don't want to get you involved in that conversation, but yeah. See? Look it. I'm glad I'm not the only one.
They're in my fridge right now.
Did the Voodoo Ranger though? I don't remember the exact time when they opened a brewery in Asheville, but did that impact the sales though? Because obviously they have a higher distribution and production and everything.
So, the idea and kind of the way that New Belgium talked about it at the time, this was during this flood of East Coast openings. Sierra Nevada, also in North Carolina, in the mountains. Stone shortly thereafter was looking around this area, ended up in Virginia. The idea there was one, production capacity. For future needs, as well as the fact that, as a national brewery, having a home base on the East Coast, basically along I-95, which just goes north and south, makes logistics easier in coordination with production. It wasn't until just recently, so within the last year or so, that Voodoo Ranger took off to the point, as well as a few other brands of New Belgium's, that excess capacity they had in Asheville was flipped to really kind of flood the market to meet the need that was there.
So let's we've got a couple of poll questions. I don't know. So everything that goes on this end nowadays and everything that's changed with Facebook, I'm not sure how many viewers we have, if anybody, on Facebook, but let's post a couple of the polls that we had queued up for tonight's episode, and we'll activate this one. Hard seltzers are selling as much as which of the following beers? So we're going to activate this one, I think. Did it activate? There we go. Yeah, it's activated. So hard seltzers as a whole are selling as much as which of the following beer? Michelob Ultra, Fat Tire, Bud Light, or PBRs? If you follow Bryan on Twitter, you'll know the answer to this question.
There have been a lot of good comments in this section tonight. I'm noticing, but I haven't really been paying too much attention. So there's a lot of talk about non-alcoholic beers, and that trend's kind of been booming. So do you have any, how do you see that going? Because I find that one very interesting.
Oh, yeah, and I'll preface this. Let me just say this. We had a guest on during the pandemic. Athletic Brewing just announced today their expansion into Connecticut, I believe, with a 150,000 barrel facility. That is crazy. That's a huge brewery.
Yes. I have a very journalistic mindset when it comes to talking about the non-alcoholic beer category. So as we stand today, it represents 0.5% of the U.S. beer market. That is up from, I believe, 4 years ago, it was about 0.36%. So that's a small increase to a small amount, which represents millions of dollars. So that matters. I think that the way the conversations have taken place around non-alcoholic beer are a little cart before the horse. It benefits Athletic being one of them from making a kind of non-alcoholic beer that has never been made before. Think about 10 years ago when O'Doul's or Busch non-alcoholic were the options.
Yeah.
You cannot compare the flavor experience of those beers 10 years ago, which you can still find St. Pauli's Girl, in a bar. You cannot compare that to the stouts, the IPAs, non-alcoholic versions that are coming from places like Athletic or Partake.
Or Well-Being.
And now I say that with, I say this because I take it from a journalistic standpoint, is that there is no concrete evidence aside from that growth to suggest that this is some kind of unwieldy category that's going to set all kinds of records. Now, will it continue to grow? Absolutely. When we talk about a goal in the industry for non-alcoholic beer to represent 1 full percent, which again is hundreds of millions of dollars, we're talking years away. And so the success of Athletic, because of the advancements that it's made in flavor, because of the success that they've had with online sales, because they can sell their beer to go anywhere, because it doesn't have to play within the boundaries of the postage systems laws about
shipping it anywhere too. Yeah.
I would not expect to see non-alcoholic beer be anything more than a blip on the balance sheet of beer come back in 10 years. It's one of those things where I've been covering this category specifically for about 3 years now, and I have this conversation over and over again where people say, well, 2 years from now, we expect this. And then it was 2 years ago. It was, 2 years from now, we expect this. And then last year it was, 2 years from now, we expect this. I'm not knocking it. And I absolutely know it plays an important role for people who don't drink, don't want to drink, want a substitute for drinking. I just think the attention that it gets and the narrative created around it can be tempered down a little bit. Because as a category, it's still a very, very small part of the larger pie.
Well, as a woman who loves craft beer, and I'm in a lot of girl beer groups, we see it a lot. Anybody who's pregnant, they're posting about it. And, as much as they love it and they're like, this is so nice, they all say, I can't wait to have a real beer.
You're singing music to the other Roth's ears. I can promise you that he will share your sentiment just about exactly. But it is very interesting that you say some of those things, because we've already talked about it. The market is saying the exact opposite: higher ABVs, less the serving size, all of that stuff. The market is doing exactly the opposite of what that industry is trying to portray. But again, I think that it's kind of like decaf, right? When decaf coffee first started, it was Sanka. And everybody said that decaf coffee brand was Sanka. If you wanted decaf coffee, that's how you ordered it, was a Sanka coffee, because that was the decaf brand. So I think it's kind of like that. It's the first ones to enter the market that's going to have a real tasting, different styles in their non-alcoholic beer. You can have a stout, you can have an IPA, you can have those other styles that we like to drink that don't have alcohol, so you're going to see an increase, right? You're going to see a little blip that's going to be there right away, but obviously market trends would tell you otherwise, because we're moving towards more ABV. Let's take a look at this this poll result real quick. We'll show it there. Hard seltzers are selling at as much as which of the following beers? The poll, 67% was Michelob Ultra, 17% Fat Tire, and 17% PBR. I told you guys in the description, you're going to be surprised as hell because they're selling at a clip equal to Bud Light, which is if I'm not mistaken, Brian, the largest brand globally, not just in the country, but globally. Bud Light is, if I recall from several years ago, is the hottest selling beer.
Bud Light is definitively, I can tell you, the number one beer brand with a bullet in the United States. Year to date, so 6.5 months, $3 billion of sales in retail chains. That means the hard seltzer category, $3 billion with a B dollars. And I want to also just to put another nice little bow on that. This was a great piece of reporting from Kate Brunot's story that she recently wrote about why hard seltzer is not facing any true issues. So the volume. So amount of hard seltzer sold in retail stores so far this year, 6.2 million barrels. So, yeah, Brian, how many barrels is that? Well, 6.2 million barrels is the amount of Boston Beer, that's Sam Adams, Sierra Nevada, Shiner, Canarchy, that's Oscar Blues and others, Firestone Walker, Bell's Brewery, Artisanal Brewing Ventures, that's going to be Southern Tier and others, Stone Brewing, Deschutes Brewery, Sweetwater Brewing, and New Glarus combined.
I'm going to
tell 11 of the largest craft breweries in the country.
Listen,
I'm a little disgusted right now. I'm not going to lie. It's terrible. I don't get the hype. It's just it tastes like flavored water.
But it is flying off the shelves. Yeah. And it is flying off the shelves for sure. And the most interesting aspect of all of this, if you don't follow Brian on Twitter, go give him a follow, because the most interesting aspect of all of this is Boston Beer has put a lot of focus on this, right? They've seen the market, they've understand it. Truly, from my understanding of what I've read with Brian and the folks that he corresponds with, Truly was down a little bit in the second quarter, and it's completely tipped investors kind of upside down of what's going on with Boston Beer. But the reality of it is seltzer is on pace as a whole category with Bud Light. When you reach those numbers, folks, it doesn't happen by accident. I can tell you right now, Truly is in no danger of falling off the face of the earth tomorrow.
One of the things I often tell people about any kind of beverage, this goes for non-alcoholic beer, for hard seltzer, for wine coolers, for a canned cocktail. We cannot dismiss the amount of sales, especially when we see them as consistent sales, because we just have to recognize people just like it. Yeah. There's a lot of people who just like it, and that we are raised as a species. It is in our lizard brains to look to our closest friends and family members to help both teach us and reinforce the things that we're thinking, we're seeing. So of course we're going to think, oh, well, none of my friends drink that stuff. Nobody drinks Michelob Ultra. That can't be the fastest growing domestic beer of the last 30 years, the most important brand in the United States in those 30 years. Well, yeah, people just like it. And that's okay. I'm never going to knock somebody if they want to drink Bud Light over a hard seltzer, that's their thing. I might pick up a craft beer, but it sells and it's consistently.
Yeah, and I have friends that love good craft beer, but we'll go to the beach and they're like, well, I can have 5 of these White Claws and I'm not trash and I didn't consume all these calories and apparently there's no laws when you're drinking those. But,
I just had a conversation last night with friends who are avid hard seltzer drinkers, and it was about they were talking about the specific sugary flavor between White Claw, Truly, and others, and what they look for when they're seeking out a hard seltzer brand. Now, that sounds kind of weird, but this is what we do with hops when we talk about IPAs. I don't want to drink that one because I don't like Centennial, but this one's got Mosaic and Citra, so that's me. They were having that conversation about hard seltzer, and I realized that sounds kind of weird because it's fermented cane sugar with flavoring, but it factors enough in their lives that was the conversation that they wanted to have.
Right. Where does hard seltzer fall in line with beer and wine? Because a lot of breweries, they do that hard water kind of thing. So and I know you have to have a separate license to brew ciders and beers in Florida, but it seems like a lot of these breweries are doing hard seltzers. So is the brewing process similar?
So it legally falls under beer. And so that's why you'll see a lot of places, both what we see in retail stores and grocery stores and convenience, as well as in tap rooms. It makes it easy because it's the same license. Now, there are differences that are happening right now. A lot of entrants into the seltzer space who are using spirits bases. So that could be vodka, for example, and they'll do it as a canned cocktail. Ranch water, which for those of you if you don't know what it is, and you shouldn't, it is a cocktail that originated with ranchers in Texas that is now becoming one of the fastest subcategories of hard seltzer in the country, both malt-based from sugar as well as spirits-based from vodka. Ranch water, the traditional cocktail, it's Topo Chico, tequila, and lime. And so all of these products are doing some version of mimicking that. And until 12 months ago, unless you lived in Texas, you certainly should not have known what it is. But just today, so Diageo, this is a while ago, Diageo purchased Lone River, which makes a brand of ranch water. And then just today, there was a company, Ranch Rider Spirits, which is based out of Texas, just announced that they're launching a direct-to-consumer online store so they can ship to something like 30 states. So if you live in North Carolina like I do, and you're curious to find out what this ranch water thing is, not an alcoholic salad dressing, you can go to their online store and order it to ship to you. So I think, again, this comes back to this idea of the way things are blurring, the way that customers seek out the idea of flavor experience and care far less about what the thing is made of. It's more about what that experience is going to be and the way that they feel about what it tastes like.
Yeah. I will tell you, I went to Lexington, Virginia, which is obviously home of Devil's Backbone. A couple of weekends ago, we go there on a regular basis for horse shows. The last time I went there, I noticed something very interesting on the shelf. Devil's Backbone is doing their own cocktails. And I will tell you, I had to pick it up just to try it because I've not tried the cocktails in a can before. Picked up what was one of them? Was a margarita, and the other one was a gin and tonic. And I will tell you, I would buy them all over again, just because of the ease something you could take to golfing, something you could take to wherever you wanted to go, the beach. I took it to a horse show and had a gin and tonic in a can, and it was very similar to what you would experience at a bar. So I can definitely see the attraction, Brian. That is spot on with that. And if there was something like that, ranch water, I'm going to pick it up and try it.
Yeah, I had a conversation, this was 2 years ago, with the team who was over at Devil's Backbone, who was overseeing the production of their canned cocktails. And what they said to me was very prescient in what we see from the pandemic and what we're experiencing today. Is he said that, if you're at home and you like spirits or you like cocktails, and you're having friends over, do you want to step away from that conversation you're having for 5 minutes to go make yourself a cocktail? Or do you want to just open the fridge, grab something that's, 5 to 9% ABV, maybe less of a kick, it's mixed in a certain way. You just grab it, you turn right back around, and you're back in it. And that's granted, that's a marketing thing. Like, that anecdote just feels like marketing, but it also feels very true. Like what you were just saying, if I can have that experience and just take it with me, that portability, both in the literal sense, the can in your hand, but also the experience that you can get, means a lot. And if anything, as Americans, we love efficiency. So why not just take these things that we enjoy, we see spirits doing well, people love cocktails, and just put it in something that's going to make everything easier for us.
That's the name of the game. And I think that's a big part of what we're dealing with in this space, is just in just having whatever it is that you're interested in drinking in the can. Cans are hot, obviously. They've been hot for a while. I don't think we're going to get away from them anytime soon, but having that ability right there, I will tell you, Brian, we were part of it, just coming off the tail end of it. A&B released a App State branded seltzer about the time everybody was coming out with a beer in North Carolina. I believe it was probably the first seltzer that was co-branded with a university anywhere in the country. I would be interested to be on the inside now to see what that seltzer is doing from them, because if they did it right, it's probably got to be a hell of a seller right now. But definitely going to be interesting to see where that space goes. Brian, I can't thank you enough, man, and we'll come back and check in with you in a minute and get some parting shots and where people can find you. But let's go to Hoppy right now. Get her parting shots. Hoppy, parting shots, where can people find you, and what do we have to look forward to from Geeks?
So I should say real quick, you did send me that Appalachian hard seltzer, and I was like, what is this? And I drank it, and it wasn't half bad. I was like, damn it, I'm enjoying this.
Hoppy, I don't send you anything you're not going to enjoy.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Actually, I didn't say the second beer I opened. It's actually a collab with Jester King and Fonta Flora. So a little bit of North Carolina. And I bought this at Jester King Brewery when I was there about a month ago. So fantastic IPA. It's at 10%. So I like the high ABV.
I was just going to say, if you get those two breweries together in the same can, that's got to be a phenomenal beer.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I had high expectations in general just for Jester King, and I didn't even realize it was a collab with Fonta Flora. And when when I was in Asheville, we stopped at Fonta Flora on the way to you, actually, and both of them have gorgeous breweries as well. That's one thing we don't have too much in Florida. But parting shots, everyone knows they can find me, the Hoppy Mommy, Twitter and Instagram, and Hops Geek News on Instagram, and then the Twitter is Geek Hops. Matt and I just released our 1-year geek anniversary. So we broke down our favorite guests, our favorite moments, our worst moments, our ugliest moments. I think our ugliest moment was after we did the Hops News Secret Santa, and I drank a barrel-aged beer all by myself, and then we recorded the geek news portion that night. So that was fun. I'm yelling at Matt about sharks and all sorts of things, and the ghost from 3 Men and a Baby. So that was a fun episode. We also just tomorrow on the podcast platforms, we have a bonus episode with a comic book creator who also is part owner in a brewery in Vancouver and did visual effects on Supernatural and Superman and Lois. So I had a lot of fun talking to him. We'll definitely have him back. And next week we have our Woodland Empire episode coming out. They're a brewery in Boise, Idaho. And Brian, do you know them?
He does. He's got an episode.
They are lovely human beings.
Yes.
I got to meet them and do a podcast with them. This maybe is almost 3 years ago now. Just incredible people.
This was actually our third recording with them. So we had them on a while ago. We just did a basic, tell us about the brewery kind of thing. And then we did a Dungeons and Dragons episode with Robin Keeley. And then this most recent episode, we did Sweet Tooth. So I had never read the comics. I've just watched the show. They'd read the comics. So we did comparisons and all that fun stuff. And yeah, they're awesome. And Matt sends me their beer all the time. So yeah, they're amazing people. So we're going to have our third volume 3 is what we call, because they're big on music. So they give me Guardians of the Galaxy vibes. And one of their first beers I had was called Not Into Yoga. So that's from Guardians of the Galaxy. So that's what we have going on with Geeks. Usually Matt does this a little more succinct, but he's not here tonight. So.
Yeah, Brian, I will tell you, be on the lookout for Woodland Empire. I believe that the other Roth is doing a collaboration beer with him around Dunkin' Donuts here very soon. So keep a lookout for that. Let's go check in with Brian, kind of get his parting shots, and he can let us know where he can find you. Brian, parting shots, where can people find you, and what do we have to look forward to from Bryan Roth?
I love the Chiron, by the way. That's just amazing. Bryan D. Roth, BRYANDROTH is pretty much where you can find me anywhere. Goodbeerhunting.com is where you can find my words and my voice on the podcast. DMs are open is what the kids say. Say hello on Twitter or Instagram. Always love chatting beer, what's happening in beer, and the ways that things are changing every day.
Awesome, Brian. Anything in the pipeline we have to look forward to from Bryan Roth?
Oh, sure. So one of the big things that I do at Good Beer Hunting is I oversee it's called the Sightlines Plus newsletter. Which is focused on trend and business analysis for industry decision makers. So I've been working along Cape Renat doing a series that focuses on the ways that people have become particularly successful at certain aspects of their business during and after the pandemic. I just had a great conversation with the team from Tripping Animals in just outside of Miami. I
was there last week. I love them.
They're great. They tripled their production volume last year during pandemic. And that was because they just had huge community turnout. They were just cranking out canned beers. And now they're trying to find ways to turn that kind of appreciation of love back into the tap room. And so it was really fun talking to them. We've got other great coverage coming up from Kate on Sightlines on Good Beer Hunting too. If something big happens in the beer industry, Kate is covering it, and I'm helping out on the back end. She's doing tremendous work for us. Awesome.
Brian, I can't thank you enough for your insight tonight. I would. The door is open, man. If we can get you back in the house for sure, we will definitely gladly have you back. It's always great to chat with you. Very insightful and a look into the beer industry from, I guess, kind of the brewery's point of view, right? What they're seeing, because I can tell you the breweries are talking about the information that Brian is spitting out tonight, because if not, they're not going to make it. Great information, Brian. You've got a lot of insight. Go follow him on Twitter if you're interested in the beer industry and that aspect of things. And I know we've got some followers that are doing some breweries. If you're not following what these guys are putting out, you're going to miss the boat, man. You got to stay informed. But Brian, can't thank you enough for your time tonight.
Thanks to both of you.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you. Hey, check us out. Hops News, obviously, anywhere and everywhere. Podcast, social media, at Hops News. You can find us there. And we'll be back next week. I'm not sure what the topic's going to be yet, but we'll pull something together in the last minute, I'm sure, like we always do. But appreciate you tuning in. Have a great night. Go grab a PBR and a jar of pickles.
How's that pickle?
Go
grab a pickle. You didn't give us an update.
Hey, I will tell you, I'm going to be honest with you. I like the pickle beers anyways. If I see a pickle beer on the shelf, I'm going to buy it. And I have yet to have one that I wouldn't buy twice. But the problem is, I'll be honest with you, pickle beers are hard to find because they're good. I mean, they don't last when they hit the shelf. Bryan, are you a pickle beer fan?
I enjoy pickles and I enjoy beer. How about that?
Ah.
I'm on his page. The pickle beers, it literally tastes like drinking pickle juice, which I don't enjoy, but I do like pickles and I like beer.
Oh, man, I can say I will drink a pickle beer any day. Yes, do a PBR and a pickle just to have that experience. Tell me how it is. All right, folks, appreciate you tuning in. Have a great night. Be safe out there.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bryan, man, can't thank you enough for joining us tonight.
Oh, of course.
Yes, I love that you talk to Tripping Animals. They're one of my favorite breweries. I feel like half the time I'm usually drinking their beer on air.
I was so happy. Completely honest, I hadn't heard about them until I was just looking at production numbers, and I was like, wait, what's going